Now I'm making a video on the generic framework of the Indian Constitution. Writing constitutions will be an important activity according to me in the days to come, amending constitutions. Especially we have got various spheres and domains where constitutions are written. So far I've talked up to the President of India. The next is the Vice President of India, and things goes on and so forth. But I'm yet to make those do some research on that. Before going any further, I thought it is very necessary to have a video session which specifically talks about the generic architecture or the framework of Indian Constitution. I've discussed it at various levels, at various other junctures or situations. But nonetheless, if someone were to see this video, he will know exactly what Indian Constitution is all about. And if he's asked to write the Constitution of any other small country or some other situation, he can definitely make use of this framework, which can be used to create and draft a constitution. I've got it in my notes, and I thought I will go through it meticulously one by one. Part 1 of the Indian Constitution, Articles 1 to 4, Union and its territory. We have discussed this already. Part 2 of the Constitution, Articles 5 to 11, talks about citizenship. Part 3 of the Constitution, Articles 12 to 35, talks about fundamental rights. Part 4 of the Constitution, Article 36 to 51, talks of directive principles of state policy. Part 4A, also called as 51A, Article 15A, talks about fundamental duties. Part 5 of the Constitution, Articles 52 to Article 78, talks about the President and the Vice President. I think it's up 52 to 62 talks about the President. Thereafter, it talks about the Vice President and also a little bit about the roles of the President. Articles 79 to 88, under Part 5, Parliament. What Parliament is all about. Articles 89 to 100 talks about the officers of Parliament. When we come down, we will be discussing all this, but please understand this. Articles 99 and 100 talks about the conduct of business in the Parliament. Articles 101 to 106 talks about disqualification of members. Articles 105 and 106, powers, privileges, and powers and privileges and other limitations. Fantastic. I cannot read this word properly. Powers, privileges, and limitations. Obviously, it talks about the Parliament. Articles 107 to Articles 111 talks about legislative procedure. Articles 112 to Article 117 talks of procedures in finance matters. Articles 118 to 122 talks about general procedures. Articles 123 talks about legislative powers of the President. Articles 124 to 147, the Union and its judiciary. Fantastic. Article 124 to 147. Articles 148 to 151, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Articles 152 to Article 244, States and their functioning. States and their functioning. Relationship between unions and states. That's the meaning of Articles 152 to Article 242. That's a major gap there. It must be definitely talking many things. We'll come to this. We might put it in a nutshell. Article 245 to 255, legislative relations. Article 256 to 261, administrative relations. obviously between the center and the state. Article 262, dispute regarding waters, very important, because very often get into such disputes regarding waters between states. We will be, of course, going through that. Article 262 of the Indian Constitution. Article 263, various forms of coordination between states. 263. I did a wonderful job by making this framework. Article 264 to Article 300A. Article 264 to Article 300A, coordination between states. It will definitely involve various other kinds of issues, but coordination of states. Article 301 to 307, trade, commerce and intercourse within the territory of India. Articles 308 to 323, services under the Union and states. Articles 323A, 323B, it talks about tribunals. Articles 324 to Article 329A talks about elections. Articles 330 to Article 342, special provisions related to certain classes. Article 330 to Article 342. Article 343 to Article 351, it talks about language policies. Articles 352 to Article 360, emerging provisions. Oh, please understand very clearly. What I have told is wrong. It's not emerging provisions, it's emergency provisions. I'll repeat that again. Articles 352 to Article 360 talks about emergency provisions. We'll have to see what it means exactly. Articles 361 to Article 367, it talks about certain other miscellaneous things. We will see what it is, but that's what it is. Article 368 talks about various amendments to the Constitution. Articles 369 to 392, temporary, transitional and special provisions to states. Articles 369 to 390, some states are weak, certain special provisions given to the states. Articles 393 to 395 talks about title and repeals. According to this document, there are 395 articles in the Indian Constitution. I think if I were to sum this up very clearly, we have got part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. Basically, part 5. Part 5 is a very lengthy thing with so many kinds of articles, which talks about the way governance in the country, within the sovereign territory of India must be conducted. It talks about president, it talks about vice president, it talks about the parliament, it talks about the judiciary. It talks about relationship between states and center. It talks about relations between various states. It talks about certain special provisions. Very important for you to for people to understand. It also talks about dispute regarding waters, Article 262 of the Indian Constitution. Now, this is what it also talks about the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. The most important thing here is Article 124 to Article 147. It talks about the judiciary, a very important component of the Constitution. It's beautifully written. It somewhere shows that the Constitution is above judiciary. It dictates what the judiciary must be doing. Now, by and large, article talks about tribunals. A very good one more word which I wrongly said. Emergency provisions. Article 350 to Article 360. When the Constitution was written, certain provisions were included into the Constitution called emergency provisions. Now, by and large, I have talked about the generic framework of the Constitution. It has basically got 5 parts, very simple to understand. I will sum this up very well so that you understand this inside and out. Indian Constitution, I think it is a well-written Constitution, but it could have been even written in lucid detail. Many other things can be added to the Constitution because, in a lucid detail, I am not an expert to comment on these matters. I humbly respect with my whole being what has been written is a very well created text with a lot of hours of effort and a lot of what we call deliberations. But still, there's scope to improve the constitution, various fronts, and make it even more understandable to the layman. But I am here telling very clearly. Someone talks about the Constitution of India. What is it basically? Basically, 5 parts. Part 1 talks about union territory, union and its territory. It talks about India, various states of the Indian Union. Part 2 talks about citizenship, who becomes citizen of India. Article 5 to 11. Part 3, fundamental rights. We are all discussing Article 12 to 35. Part 4, Articles 36 to 51, directive principles of state policy. Article 4A of 51, Part 4A, Article 51A, very important these ones. Part 4A, Article 51A, fundamental duties of citizens. The next thing is Part 5. For all practical purposes, I can throw this paper. Part 5 talks the most important, most subjective thing within the territory of India, how government is run. It talks about judiciary, it talks about the president, it talks about vice president, it talks about parliament, it talks about the relationship between the center and the states, it talks about relations between states, it talks about water dispute resolution, it talks about various others miscellaneous provisions, it talks about special status to special considerations to certain states, and it also talks about some amendments to the constitution done from time to time. That's all Indian constitution all about, not to worry about. I'm actually, as I told you somewhere, I want to study all the constitutions of countries around the world. The Indian constitution is this. Of course, the largest of the part of it might be the part 5. I will go to that again. I don't want to make any part 5, which talks about how government is run, which has got a lot of scope for improvement and changes from time to time. But this is what the Indian Constitution is. According to this document, 395 articles are in the Constitution. Which I'm not worried about exactly how many articles are there. You can add articles to the Indian Constitution, make it 550 also. The next, maybe in sometime down the line, we might have to do it. But as it stands now, that's what this document says, 395 articles. And this is the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. And it talks about all these factors. The most important thing for me, part 5, which we were discussing recently, but I've stopped in between. I'll have to continue on that. But please understand that this is what it is all about. Part 5 talks about our states, it talks about interaction between center and states, it talks about the miscellaneous provisions, it talks about the judiciary, and it's not a very difficult thing to understand. You can understand very easily. Thank you. This is Piyush Bash from Bangalore, India.